Have we ever seen anything like this in the United States before at this level?
Woodrow Wilson imprisoned people who held up signs with his own words on it, protesting in front of the White House. He shut down papers. Obama used the Espionage Act from 1917, in fact, to go after leakers.
And in the Nixon administration, he had his enemies list. Journalism has really been a resilient profession. And now, it's called upon to be the most resilient.
Marty Baron, the former editor of the Washington Post, says it really well when he says, we don't go to war, we go to work. Documenting this time and doing so in a fair and impartial manner, and to write the truth as best as we know how every single day. And it is very tough to create content that people will accept as factual and, show your work. We have all sorts of transparency projects. We try to help people understand how we got the information, why we reported it the way we did.
I think what Susan says is very important. We also have to be able to protect our profession and our freedoms through the courts as well. And clearly, a lot of the polling and surveying show that we're rated lowly, and it's not the first time that's happened either. But that's on us to kind of build that trust. And part of it is what Susan says, transparency, letting people know how we do our work, being open, publishing the documents, letting people see the work, taking questions, not ducking them.
So I think there's an evolving way in which people are getting their news and information, many of it through people who previously worked for publications of the kind that we all respected so much, but now are using those outlets.
Well, and a lot of the publications also publish across a wide, have to and want to publish across a wide variety of platforms, including places like GBH or the Washington Post or the LA Times, using all of the tools to reach the widest possible, most diverse audience that you can reach.
So these don't necessarily have to be a threat to mainstream media.
They should be the savior of mainstream media.
Every Republican administration for the last 50 years has threatened to defund public media. This is by far, no question, the most serious threat that has the highest likelihood of passage. And public media has always been funded 2 years in advance, and they did that so that public media wasn't affected by the winds of political change at any one moment. So they are trying to claw back money that Congress has already appropriated, beginning for fiscal 26 and fiscal 27. Fiscal 26 begins October 1st, like practically tomorrow. And so if this happens, this is going to be a devastating blow for public media across the United States. The administration sicked the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, on NPR and PBS, saying we were not following the rules for sponsorship. They're saying that our sponsorship, our writing, our underwriting is more like advertising. In fact, we follow the rules that the FCC laid out. What happens if we are defunded? Well, immediately at GBH, 8% of our budget just goes away, the money that we directly get from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. But for a lot of stations all over the country, that 8%, especially small stations, especially in rural areas, 8% of public funding might be more like 20% or 30% or 40%.
Jeff, could you talk about, in this context, what Voice of America is?
If you didn't have a Voice of America Armenian service, Russia would control totally the media there. Do you know how many people are in that service that reaches a third of the people in Armenia, which is under assault by Russia? 5 people. Those 5 people are reaching a third of the people in that country, and now they're not on the air at all.
Why would they want no Voice of America?
The Middle Eastern Broadcasting Company, just in Arabic, reaches 30 million people. Why was it set up? To be a counterpoint to Al Jazeera. Who owns Al Jazeera? The government of Qatar. What did Qatar just give to the President of the United States? A $400 million plane.
A lot of times journalism tells uncomfortable truths, and people don't want those uncomfortable truths told. Journalism is undefeated. And I say that because no matter what the ownership, no matter the times, journalists manage to do the work. Some of the greatest journalism is happening now.
These are all enterprises that owned by people who need the government to do something with them in another area. And what Trump has done that I think is terribly dangerous, brilliant in its own horrible way, which he's figured out a way to use the levers of power to squeeze these people to do this.
Sets off such distrust in the public that you can't believe anything because it's all a setup, it's all a put-up, it's all for sale.
When you see these kinds of things, it does have a chilling effect across the board beyond simply the journalists. And that's probably the new disturbing thing.
The reason people trust the news media largely is local news.
Look, I think local news is trusted news, and it might not always be liked, or people sometimes hate their local paper a lot, but at least they know where to complain, and at least they know who to yell at. It's really important that people at least know, what you can do to try to make a difference or get your voice heard. It is so different from sort of screaming into the void of national programming. It really matters.
I'd like to hear from each of you. What can ordinary people do in the middle of this sort of crisis?
Don't take a fair and independent press for granted. Subscribe to any news channel that you believe in, but particularly local news and nonprofit organizations.
Through membership, subscriptions, fundraisers, events, and find a way to get involved in your community and the issues that are important to it.
Don't be depressed. Take action. It's joyful. Consider yourself part of a movement. Get to know your neighbors. And in terms of this, I totally agree with the idea of helping local journalism. I mentioned before the idea of legal action, which I think can be hugely important, but also get your kids involved.
I agree with all of that, and I especially support your local news organizations. And also, I think, learn as much as you can about how news media works, what freedom of the press is all about, and how that impacts your life. I think the more you know, the better it is for us all.
Thank you. And ClassACT has two things to say to all of you. Make a plan to do some of the things that our four panelists have mentioned just now. Make a plan for yourself. Do something once a week. Do something once a month. Do something every day. Call your Congress people. Talk to your friends. Definitely support your local news outlets and NPR and public broadcasting.